Lian Mei had never been called beautiful. Even as a little girl, she had learned to hide behind her sisters during family gatherings, keeping her head low while everyone praised the others. Her sisters had soft laughter, bright faces, and eyes that sparkled with confidence. Lian Mei was quiet. Her skin was darker from helping in the garden, her hands rough from chores, and her smile shy. Her family often said she was unlucky to have been born plain. In their fine home in San Francisco, her father ran a small trading business and her mother loved to show off her daughters. The eldest two had married rich men. The youngest, Lian Mei, had become an invisible shadow in her own house. She cooked, cleaned, and served tea while listening to their laughter from the next room. One morning her mother called her into the parlor. On the table was a letter written in English, though Lian Mei could only read a few words. Her mother smiled in a way that made her uneasy. "A rancher from the countryside wants a wife," her mother said. "He has written to our family. He thinks he will marry our eldest daughter, but your father has other plans." Lian Mei looked at her in surprise. "Other plans?" Her mother's smile grew colder. "You will go. It is time you bring some use to this family." Lian Mei felt her chest tighten. "He thinks he is marrying my sister?" Her father stepped in, waving his hand. "Nonsense. The man will be lucky to have any bride at all. You will go and do as you are told. You will be respectful. Perhaps he will keep you." They didn't tell her the man's name until days later. John Carter, a rancher living far out in the wide-open lands of the American Midwest. He had written polite letters asking for a wife who could help on the ranch, someone kind and honest. He had lost his wife and son to illness years ago and wanted to rebuild his life. Lian Mei didn't know she was being sent as a cruel joke. Her parents and sisters whispered and laughed when she wasn't looking. "Let's see what he says when he sees her," one of them giggled. "He'll send her right back on the next train." Lian Mei spent her last night at home packing a small bag. She folded a faded blue dress, a simple comb, and a small jade pendant her grandmother had given her. It was the only thing she truly owned. She didn't cry. Instead, she looked out her window at the fog rolling in over the city and whispered to herself, "Maybe I will find peace where no one knows me." The journey was long. The train moved for days through valleys and mountains, then across open plains where the sky seemed to touch the earth. She had never seen such space before. No tall buildings, no crowded streets, only endless land and golden light. It scared her and thrilled her at the same time. When the train finally stopped, a tall man stood waiting near the platform. He looked out of place among the travelers, dressed in worn boots, a wide hat, and a simple shirt. His eyes searched the crowd until they found her. Lian Mei hesitated, clutching her bag tightly. He smiled gently and walked toward her. "Miss Lian?" he asked, tipping his hat. His voice was deep and kind. She nodded quickly, nervous to speak. "Yes, I am Lian Mei." He looked at her for a long moment, and she noticed his eyes weren't cruel. They were steady and honest. He seemed surprised, not because she wasn't what he expected, but because she looked so frightened and tired. "The ride must have been hard," he said softly. "Let's get you home." The word home made her heart jump. The ranch was several miles outside the small town. When they arrived, she saw wide fields, horses grazing, and a wooden house that stood tall against the open sky. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and warm. He carried her small bag inside himself, saying, "You'll have your own room. Take your time settling in." The first few days were quiet. Lian Mei didn't know what to say. She woke early to cook, swept the floors, and tried to make herself useful. John thanked her each time, but he never demanded anything. He noticed how she folded her hands when she was unsure, how she worked carefully, how she watched the sunrise before starting her chores. The town people were curious. When John came to buy supplies, whispers followed him. "He married a foreign woman," they said, "and not a pretty one." Some laughed behind his back, but John never responded. He only said, "She's a good woman," and walked away. Lian Mei, however, could feel the stares when she went to town with him. Once at the general store, two women whispered loudly enough for her to hear. Poor man. Couldn't he find someone better? Her cheeks burned, but she kept her head down. Later that night, John found her in the kitchen, her hands trembling as she washed dishes. "You heard them, didn't you?" he asked gently. She nodded without turning around. He paused, then said, "People talk when they don't know the truth. But I know what kind of person you are, Lian. Don't let them make you small." No one had ever said something like that to her. It was the first time she felt seen, not for her face but for her heart. As weeks passed, Leon May began to change. She smiled more often. She learned to milk the cows and feed the chickens. She planted flowers by the porch and taught John how to make tea the way her grandmother had taught her. The house, once lonely and still, began to feel alive again. John would sometimes stand by the window, watching her hum softly while she worked in the garden. He realized he had stopped thinking about her looks long ago. What he saw now was grace, the kind that came from kindness and strength. One afternoon, the town held a small gathering. It was a fair with music, food, and games. John asked Leon May to go with him. She hesitated, afraid of more whispers, but he insisted kindly, "You belong here too." At first, people stared. Some smiled politely, others didn't. But when John walked with her, holding his head high, she felt courage rising inside her. She spoke little, but her calm manner drew quiet respect from a few who noticed how gently she spoke to the children and how patiently she helped serve food. Then, as they were leaving, a man from town made a loud remark. "Didn't know mail-order brides came from so far away," he joked, earning laughter from his friends. Leon May froze. Her heart sank and she wanted to disappear. But before she could move, John turned sharply toward the man. "That's enough," he said, his voice firm but calm. "You don't talk about my wife that way." The laughter stopped. No one had ever seen John Carter angry, but his words carried weight. He took Leon May's hand gently and led her away. That night, Leon May sat by the fire, her eyes full of tears she didn't want him to see. "Why did you stand up for me?" she asked softly. "Because you deserve it," he replied simply. "No one should make you feel small for who you are." Her tears fell quietly. "Back home," she whispered. "No one ever said that to me." John looked into the flames and said, "Then they didn't see you the way I do." The room was silent for a long time, except for the crackling fire. Something changed between them that night. It wasn't love declared in words, but something deeper, a bond built on respect, warmth, and quiet understanding. As the days turned into months, the ranch flourished again. The garden Leon May planted bloomed in color. The animals grew healthy, and laughter began to return to the house. Leon May often thought of her family far away, how they must still be laughing at their cruel trick. But strangely, she didn't feel angry anymore. She had found peace in this wide, open land with the man who saw her heart. And though she didn't yet know it, this was only the beginning of her new life. The life of the woman the world once called ugly, but whom one kind rancher would soon cherish as his queen. The sun rose early on the ranch, painting the sky with soft orange and gold. Leon May stood by the window, watching the light touch the fields. Each morning felt new, like life had started over. She had been on the ranch for almost a year now. The fear and silence she once carried had slowly turned into peace. She was no longer the quiet, hidden girl from San Francisco. Her hands were strong from working the land, her skin warmed by the sun and her eyes calm and full of quiet confidence. John often said she had changed the ranch completely. "You brought life back here," he told her one evening as they sat by the porch watching the horses graze. Leon May smiled softly. "It is the land," she said. "It gives when you care for it." John looked at her with warmth. "And you've cared for everything, or even me." His words made her heart flutter, though she said nothing. There was a kind of unspoken bond between them, something that didn't need fancy words. He was gentle and steady. She was kind and patient. Together, they had built a home that felt alive. In town, people began to see her differently, too. The woman they once whispered about now walked with quiet dignity. She brought homemade food to neighbors when they were sick, shared seeds for their gardens, and taught children small crafts from her homeland. Slowly, the laughter that once followed her turned into soft greetings and respect. But one afternoon, everything changed with a single letter. John had just returned from town, dust on his boots and a tired look on his face. In his hand, he held an envelope with a red seal. "A letter for you," he said, placing it on the table. It came from San Francisco. Leon May's hands trembled slightly as she picked it up. She hadn't heard from her family since the day she left. Her heart beat faster as she opened it. The letter was written in her mother's handwriting, neat, sharp, and cold. It began with greetings that felt forced, then moved quickly to cruel words hidden under false politeness. Her family wrote that they hoped the farmer hadn't sent her back already. They laughed about how he must have been surprised to receive her instead of her beautiful sister. "We thought you would last a week at most," the letter said. "But perhaps countrymen are not too picky." The words stung like thorns. Leanne May's chest tightened. She read the letter again and again, each line cutting deeper. All the quiet laughter, all the hidden pain she had buried came rushing back. John noticed the color drain from her face. "What's wrong?" he asked softly. Without a word, she handed him the letter. He read it slowly, his jaw tightening. When he finished, he looked at her with deep sorrow, not for himself, but for her. "They thought this was a joke," he said quietly. Leanne May looked at the floor. "Yes," she whispered. "They wanted to shame me, to send me away like a mistake." John placed the letter down and stepped closer. "Then they failed," he said gently. "They sent you here thinking they were being cruel, but they gave me the greatest gift I could have asked for." Her eyes filled with tears. "A gift?" she asked softly. He nodded. "They sent me someone kind, strong, and good. They sent me someone who made my house a home again. They thought they were playing a trick, but they gave me my happiness back." Leanne May covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking as silent tears fell. John reached out carefully as if afraid to break the fragile moment. "You don't have to carry their cruelty anymore," he said. "You are not their joke, Leanne. You are my heart." That night she placed the letter in the fire. The paper curled and turned to ash. As she watched it burn, she felt something heavy lift from her chest. She was no longer the daughter who had been sent away. She was a woman who had built her own life, and in that quiet moment she knew she would never look back again. Days passed, and something in their home changed. John started spending more time near her, helping her in the garden, fixing the fence beside her, asking her thoughts on small things. He had always respected her, but now there was a gentle closeness between them, full of unspoken feelings. One evening after dinner, John asked her to walk with him to the edge of the field. The sun was setting, painting the land in gold and purple. He stopped near a patch of wildflowers she had planted months ago. "You made this place beautiful," he said quietly. She smiled. "It was already beautiful. I only helped it grow." He looked down at her, his eyes warm. "You helped me grow too, Leanne." For a long moment they stood in silence. Then, taking a breath, he said, "I don't want you to ever feel like you were sent here by accident. I want you to know, if you'll let me, I'd be proud to call you my wife." Leanne May froze. The world seemed to stand still. She looked at him, unsure if she had heard right. "Your wife?" she whispered. He nodded, his voice steady. "Yes, not out of pity, not out of duty, man, but out of love. You've filled this home with peace, and I can't imagine life without you." Tears welled in her eyes again, but this time they were warm, not painful. She nodded slowly. "I thought no one could ever see me," she said. "But you did." John smiled, his eyes soft. "How could I not?" They married quietly a month later, surrounded by a few neighbors who had grown fond of her. There were no fancy dresses or big celebrations, just flowers from her garden and a simple ceremony under the open sky. When John said his vows, his voice trembled slightly. "They sent me a woman they called unwanted," he said, "but I see only the woman who saved my life." Leanne May's hands shook as she placed the ring on his finger. "And they sent me a man who taught me that kindness can heal what cruelty breaks." The people watching wiped their eyes. It was simple, pure, and full of truth. After the wedding, their life continued much the same, only now their laughter filled the air more often. Together they worked the land, shared quiet meals, and watched the seasons change. The ranch grew prosperous, but more than that, it grew joyful. Years later, travelers passing through the town often heard stories about the gentle woman who ran the Carter Ranch. They said she was once sent away in shame, but now she walked with a calm grace that made everyone stop and smile. Some said her beauty wasn't the kind seen in photographs, but the kind that could be felt, the kind that came from love, patience, and peace. Children from nearby farms would come to visit her garden, where she taught them how to care for the soil, and told them small stories from her childhood. "The earth remembers kindness," she would say with a gentle smile. "So always be gentle with it, and with people too." John never grew tired of hearing her laugh. Every evening as the sun set, He would watch her sitting on the porch, the wind playing with her hair. Sometimes he would think back to that cruel letter and how fate had turned cruelty into blessing. Many years later, when people in town spoke of love stories, they often told the story of the rancher and the woman he called his queen. They said she wasn't sent to him by mistake. She was sent by destiny. And whenever someone asked Leon May if she ever missed her old life, she would smile softly and shake her head. "No," she would say. "They sent me away to laugh at me. But I found something they will never understand, a peace, love, and a home that I made with my own hands." In the quiet of the plains, under the wide, endless sky, Leon May's heart finally found where it belonged. And in that place she was never the ugly daughter again. She was Leon May Carter, the woman who turned cruelty into kindness, sorrow into strength, and a cruel joke into the most beautiful story of love.